Welcome to our 2021 recap and 2022 preview podcast from TV Podcast Industries. Welcome back, fellow industrialists. We are going through everything that we've covered in 2021 and talking about what's coming up in 2022 on TV Podcast Industries. This is our fourth annual version of this, as far as I remember. This is the fourth time we've done our kind of recap and look forward for the rest of the year. So I'm glad you're joining us for this. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hello there, fellow industrialists, and of course, a special mention to our fellow wheelies, as we will be covering the Wheel of Time tavern quiz in this, and the winner of that pub quiz as well. Yes, welcome to the podcast. I'm one of your hosts, John.
How do you do, fellow kids? I'm Chris. I'm trying to be cool and down with it as we go into 2022.
Fellow kids? I thought you were going to go for fellow defenders, Chris, at least.
Yes.
No, but I'm hip, you know? I'm with it. In it, bruv.
Well...
no, I'm really not. I can't even come up with a cool London accent and get away with it.
I was wondering what country that came from.
Thanks.
But yes, welcome back. We will be talking about all of the shows that we covered this year in 2021 and the shows that we're going to be covering hopefully in 2022. Lots and lots of new TV coming up this year that hopefully we're going to be able to squeeze in and cover off this year. But this will be, let's say, spoiler-filled-ish. We're not probably going to spoil any major movements within shows that we've discussed, but we're going to talk about what we liked and didn't like overall about the shows that we talked about so far. But if you haven't watched some of the shows and want to remain spoiler-free, you may want to skip through some of the sections that we're talking about, some of the shows that we've discussed. But we do hope that you subscribe to our podcast on TV Podcast Industries. You can get that by going to tvpodcastindustries.com. There's loads of ways to subscribe on there. We'd also love if you joined us over in our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries. You can follow us on Twitter as well at TV Pod Industries. But we do want to hear your thoughts about any of the shows that we're covering. You can email us with any of those thoughts to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. Let's get into talking about all the shows we covered in 2021. We did 101 podcasts last year throughout the full year. Just for comparison, for some of our listeners, we did 81 podcasts in 2020 and 82 podcasts in 2019. So we've done another 20 podcasts on top of that.
Wow.
And boy, is my mouth sore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a couple of Disney Plus TV shows, really, there, with that extra 20.
Well, absolutely, yeah. Yep, probably exactly what it is. I've kind of categorized everything that we've covered last year into all those types of things we've covered, which includes all the Marvel live action shows that we covered last year, all the animated shows that we covered last year, all the movies that we've covered, and then any other live action shows that we covered last year. Yes, John in the background is calling me a geek and nerd for all of this, but it's the only way to talk about them, really, to categorize them all together and, and give everybody a little bit of time. Well, we start off with the animated shows we covered last year. For the first time on TV Podcast Industries, we did cover some animated shows.
And which colour code is that one?
Well, that's colour coded to show you who the winner is of our polls, John. Which our wonderful listeners can't see the colour coding, so that doesn't help them at all.
And what does the shading mean? On this very complicated table.
The shading is it's the categorization of the shows. I just mentioned the brackets a second ago. If you were paying attention
Excellent
to my voice
stuff.
rather than the document.
Now I understand the table.
Anyway, let's start out with the animated shows. As I mentioned, we hadn't covered any animated shows on TV Podcast Industries before last year. We've covered some animated movies. We covered Into the Spider-Verse, I think was one of the big animated movies that we covered in the past. But last year we covered 3 animated shows, all in different universes, which is really interesting. We had Invincible, which is Robert Kirkman's ultra-violent show on Amazon Prime, Prime Video. First season of that show, also already greenlit for 2 more seasons. We also covered Marvel's What If, which was effectively, we now know, is part of the MCU, but was done as an animated show. And we covered the first season of Star Wars The Bad Batch, which was a kind of sequel to the Star Wars Clone Wars cartoons. So all various big fan bases and all various different, shows in different universes. What did you guys like about those shows, or why do you think we covered them? John, what did you think about the shows?
Well, I loved Invincible. I know I didn't do the podcast, but I really enjoyed the series. I haven't read the comics either, so I really enjoyed just getting into Invincible, and the story that was done, and, you know, ultra-violence, certainly in animated form, I think is always pretty good. But you know, for me, I think I really enjoyed What If. That was a surprise for me. I just really wasn't expecting too much from it. And now we see that it is, well, potentially, linked very closely with the MCU, certainly with the Strange Supreme character, from the series. So really, really enjoyed that. I love that episode. Yes, very dark, a little sort of hopeless, I guess, but I really enjoyed what they did with the Doctor Strange part. And for me, then Bad Batch, I really love Star Wars. I've loved their animated shows, from Clone Wars, the original Clone Wars, I guess the more recent version, and, you know, leading here with the Bad Batch as well. Just really, really enjoyed it. And it was just good to, you know, we got a good number of people really engaged in all three of these animated shows. Absolutely. Which was really good, because it is kind of the first time we've done anything sizable on animation.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so really, I really enjoyed all three. I mean, I enjoyed most of what we did here. If I was to pick one for me, I think it would be What If. I really liked how that plays out. And it was good having the little link in with Podcastica as well, for one of the episodes.
Yeah, Jason Kabasi from Podcastica joining us for one of the episodes. That was kind of fun, having a fourth host for an episode that I didn't enjoy. So that was good to have a little extra balance on that one. How about yourself, Chris? What was your thought on the animated shows for this year?
It was good. I always had some worries about us covering animated shows just based on the level of detail that you can get into, in sometimes a more younger skewing kind of animation, typically outside of anime kind of thing, can skew more younger, so more simple kind of storylines, things like that. Typically, before anyone jumps into the comments.
I was totally going to jump in with, then Invincible punched you in the face.
Exactly. Invincible for me was probably my favorite, just because I have been a Kirkman fan for years, an Invincible fan for years. I actually finished while we were going through the show, and then when the show finished, I continued on my reread of the Invincible series beginning to end. And it's something, and it's actually a consistent thing for me this year with a lot of our shows, is stuff that I've read the original, if you want to call it that, and a lot of these are adaptations. So why this, the Invincible, so on. Yeah. So seeing the differences and the changes that made have kept things very fresh for me. I really enjoyed What If, especially now how much we know it is linked in to the MCU as a whole. And I was hesitant going into the Bad Batch, having not watched Clone Wars, have not kind of big Star Wars fan, just not gone into that side of the house, the Rebels, the Clone Wars, or any of the other animated. So I was hesitant going in, but seeing the detail that they have put in, and some of the things that kind of, and we made the joke, in Filoni we trust. And it's true, because there was things in there, like we were seeing that like something that only we would kind of find cool about how I think it was how they moved over from the Republic credits to the new Imperial credit system, and the exchanges that they had. And we were like, wow, that's a deep, deep cut. That's something only some we would care about. But it's seeing that there. So overall, very happy we dipped our toe into it.
Yeah.
Interested to see where it goes in 2022, knowing that we may only have potentially 1 or 2 additional animated pieces coming in 2022.
Yeah, that is the interesting thing, isn't it? Because Invincible has been confirmed for 2 more seasons, but animation does take a bit of time. Yes. So it's likely we're not going to get a season 2 of Invincible within 2022. And then The Bad Batch also confirmed for a second season. I believe that was confirmed way before, but was only released to the public after the show came out, because it's a follow-on from a really popular show. I think they knew the property they had. So we may get a Bad Batch season 2 within this year, as opposed to an Invincible. But it is really interesting. Doing animated shows was kind of odd. I'm a massive Walking Dead fan, so I love Robert Kirkman. I'd read the first volume of Invincible. So, when Chris came up with the idea of doing the Invincible show, I was kind of going, well, we don't really do animation, and it's a lot of work. There's a lot of shows going on at the same time, but I'm so glad we did it, because it is a really good show and a really good companion piece to our Boys podcast in a year where we didn't have The Boys on TV. It was nice to cover something as adult and violent, even in an animated form. So we kind of keeping that mindset for the year. That was pretty cool. And then The Bad Batch, myself and John had finished watching the entirety of the Clone Wars. So it was only natural that we wanted to cover Bad Batch as a follow-up. And I'm so glad it did tie in so well. It brought in loads of characters from years of watching the Clone Wars. It felt like it was really well tied into that. So that was kind of cool.
Well, and a few others as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're not covering the live action Star Wars shows at the moment, but Boba Fett is back at the moment, and Fennec Shand is the secondary character in that show. She's one of the main characters in that show, and she had quite a good arc in the Bad Batch animated series. So it was nice to have that tie-in for a show that we're all really enjoying at the moment as well.
Yeah, no, very much so. And I know Ahsoka started in the animated, moved her way into the Mandalorian, and now has her own show in the works.
Coming in the future, exactly.
In the future.
Yeah.
And on What If, we know it has been greenlit for season 2.
That's right.
And apparently they're deep in the works. We know that 1 episode from season 1 is now going to be in season 2.
Yeah.
The Gamora episode.
Mm-hmm.
So it is questionable when we get that. It depends on how I would like to say this year, coming in 2022, but it's a tough one. It really depends on how far they were in production.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. We'd been saying all the way throughout the season how disconnected each of the shows were, and then they were all wrapped up into one overarching storyline. They may wait for another position in the MCU to do that again, where it makes sense. So they may wait for a year gap and then come back with What If season 2. We just really don't know how Disney Plus are going to be doing their shows in the future. It's really hard to kind of guess how they're doing stuff, and with their live action stuff, it's kind of difficult to know when they're going to be filming this stuff to be coming back out in future. Speaking of which, let's talk about the MCU live action shows we covered for last year, because there were 4 major shows outside of What If, and I would categorize What If as one of the MCU shows for last year. But outside of that, there were 4 big live action shows. We started the year with WandaVision, led into Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which became Captain America and the Winter Soldier, as we all know. At the end of that series, we had Loki, which is the only show to get a second season announced at the end of it. Left us on a big cliffhanger to move into a second season. And then we've just finished Hawkeye at the end of the year. It closed out, going from one holiday to another holiday, starting on Thanksgiving and ending on Christmas week. So some interesting shows this year, all different, I would say.
So
definitely.
What do you think, Tom?
Definitely. I mean, I know when you put up the polls, for me, it was WandaVision. I really enjoyed this. I think this, from a TV point of view, really just was very different. I mean, characters that we know, the characters that we love, introduce new characters, certainly firmly in the MCU. But I loved the changing up of the TV shows. It was something different. Yeah. It honored those types of TV shows, but brought it in to tell a story in a really fantastic way. Some great music coming out of this. And of course, leading into Multiverse of Madness, at least. We already have the reference from the trailer for Multiverse of Madness having Westview in there. So I just really enjoyed this approach to the MCU live action on Disney Plus. I thought it was really bold, really different. and I really, really enjoyed it. I'm excited for Loki season 2 as well. Again, that just really was in my wheelhouse. I loved all the Lokis, in particular Richard E. Grant in the classic Loki outfit. I loved introducing the timeline branching and that element, and certainly with He Who Will Not Be Named, or Kang, as if we can call him that.
No, he's a different version of Kang.
Was just having his introduction was just superb.
Yeah.
Hawkeye, I
was just
really
fabulous,
enjoyed getting into the festive spirit. Much more lighter for me, but just that nice lightness of touch for the Christmas period. And I think with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I think, that was, again, also a bit of a gamble with the MCU really most explicitly covering those themes around Black Lives Matter and that element of this transition for the Falcon to become Captain America and what that means. I really enjoyed this though, because yes, I love magic. I love the space side of Marvel. I also like that kind of espionage shield. I like that side of it as well. And this very firmly roots, or at least keeps, that element of the MCU, at least from what we got in that show, within this next phase. Yes, it may involve the Skrulls possibly, but I do like that they're keeping something that is more earthbound as well, because we are certainly moving away from planet Earth quite a bit with some of the MCU properties, which I love, don't get me wrong, but I also like it being grounded with these characters like the Winter Soldier, like Falcon or Captain America, or with Sharon Carter, all these different sides of things. But they could transition into Sword in, I guess, in space.
They might be able
Shield
to.
in space, ultimately.
Don't forget about Dancing Baron Zemo this year as well.
Well, yeah. And, well, actually, that was the great thing, because for me, he was probably my favourite bad guy, ultimately, from those first 10 movies of the MCU. I really enjoyed his story, and having him, involved in this series was just quality for me.
Absolutely. What did you think of the state of TV MCU this year, Chris?
Loved it. It's the MCU. It's, I unapologetically love how they are doing this. We've said for a long time, a lot of these shows, a lot of these characters deserve their own show. And we got taste of that with, say, Cloak and Dagger, more importantly, S.H.I.E.L.D., Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., 7 seasons of the potential of doing that and what could go into it, and then not even touching the Netflix stuff. So seeing Hawkeye, okay, it is fan service, but it's not fan service in that it's fan service in some of the mentions and the topics and the Easter eggs and things like that. But the themes being discussed are transcend comic book movies or TV shows.
I think
that superhero aspect.
I think you're right, but certainly with WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier, those two shows dealt with quite serious themes. Loki, not as serious. It's setting up a second season as well, so it probably didn't have to do as in-depth a storyline as we saw in the other two shows, and Hawkeye felt a lot lighter, but did have some great moments in it, and really enjoyable moments in it overall. Do you have a favourite of the 4 that were released last year, Chris? Difficult, isn't it?
It really is. I loved Hawkeye. My recency bias says Hawkeye.
Right.
Because it was so, in a difficult year, and a difficult ending of the year, it was fun, lighthearted, easy to watch. The truth gun to my head, it's probably WandaVision, just based on the actual themes discussed and the topics, and just some of the end, kind of last 2 episodes on that. And I still remember Agatha.
Well, yeah.
Just Catherine Hahn knocking it out of the park in terms of so many aspects of
Absolutely.
that. But yeah, for me, I think it is WandaVision, just when you go beat for beat, kind of a comparison. But again, they're apples, oranges, bananas, and kiwis. They're very different animals.
Yeah, just great that we've had that many great episodes of the MCU. I think the only thing I'd probably say is that they're still finding their feet sometimes. You know, I was interested to see some of the critical reviews towards the end of the year, where a lot of them were wondering how these worked as TV shows, whether they worked well as TV shows. Yes, they were TV shows. There was episodes released every single week, but I'm not sure whether Marvel has got that balance yet on their TV, because I was laughing. Everybody wants to get more of these characters, and then they're given more of the characters, and the response was, you could have done that in a movie. Why did you do a 6-episode season about it? But I think it allows you to spend more time with the characters, and that's why we cover so much TV on TV Podcast Industries. We enjoy spending time and having stories about characters, but they are crafting them into 6 episodes that can be watched back to back very often. We'll see. I think that's something that will develop in the future, but I think I don't have any criticisms overall of the MCU on TV this year. It's been really good, and nice to have those shackles off a bit, which have been on when they were doing 22 episode shows of TV, when they were doing ABC shows like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where you can't overtly reference the MCU because you're doing so much content every single week that you may step on the toes of story that they want to tell in the future. So, nice to have those shackles off. Same with the Marvel Netflix shows and Cloak and Dagger. All of those shows are hampered a little bit by not being able to step into the MCU, whereas now it's interesting to see what they're doing with it as a company.
It's weird, isn't it, that we say they're not able to step into the MCU, and that's the reason.
Exactly what happened this year.
It is. It's and because I find that, intuitively speaking, pretty bonkers to say that, quite frankly.
Okay.
But, you know, let's hope it's not this monolith of just the MCU's way of the universe. But it just can't be that. It's so, if that to me ultimately feels restrictive.
Okay. Yeah,
but
I get
even though they're expanding it out, it seems a bit ironic, but it's like we've said with a number of other shows here, like, for example, The Wheel of Time, which in and of itself are monolithic 15 books where, you know, are we going to go line by line or word by word as to what happens? And in the end, even the MCU is adapting comics. It's a different medium.
Of course.
And even with TV as opposed to movies, you know, they're different mediums. They lend themselves to different ways of storytelling depending on how they're presented, certainly with TV, because you can chuck it all in at once, as we've said, or you can release it weekly, or you could be on cable where you're having to deal with adverts, and it all lends itself to very different ways of how you would construct and structure that program, and how that comes across, and even how that's received to some extent. So, but I think they've done a great job with the MCU live action. I've really enjoyed the 4 that we've covered.
Yeah, I think the only other thing that's been opened as a discussion this year by having these MCU live action is what's canon and what's not in this Marvel universe that's been created over the last 10 years, and none more so than Hawkeye. We'll talk about it here. I'm sure you've all watched Hawkeye, our wonderful fellow defenders. So, you know, Kingpin appeared in there. So, not spoiling anything, but how interesting is it that we have a character from the Netflix universe appearing in the shows? Vincent D'Onofrio very clear about the fact that this is his character. He was snapped away for 5 years and now he wants to take his city back. That's what his line was about. So he's very clear that he's been told it's his character from the Netflix shows appearing in the MCU. But it sparked all these discussions about whether the Netflix shows are canon anymore. I think this is a really interesting idea that fans of these universes have. Exactly to your point, John. It's not just one monolithic universe. These are stories that are told with the characters all approved by Marvel when they came out. So what is that canon in your mind? Nobody's ever said it's not canon at all. But as we've mentioned a couple of times on the podcast, Kevin Feige's not going to send an 8-year-old to go and watch the Daredevil TV show so they can enjoy watching Pizza Dog on Hawkeye. He's going to incorporate pieces of those characters into the show, and you may never need to talk about the stories that and experiences and things that went on in the Daredevil shows. All those shows on Netflix were quite small in the universe. None of them were talking about massive world-changing events. That was the point of them. So you may never need to talk about those shows again, but it doesn't make them not canon.
Yeah, well, except the one with the dragon.
The Defenders.
That ended off basically being a building in New York, though. It wasn't a world-changing event.
But there was the 9 cities. There was reference to that other world, So I think, I just think, even though Kevin Feige might not want a 9-year-old to go and watch them, more than likely, if they're like me as a kid, they will go and watch them. So, that's great. And if they maybe have seen something that they shouldn't have done too early, well, then I guess they'll have to.
What I mean by that is Kevin Feige is not going to come out and say these are no longer canon. He's also not going to encourage an 8-year-old to say that you must watch those shows in order to watch this fluffy Christmas set show that happens to have a cute dog in it. You must go and watch that 3-season show that's aimed at over 18s and adults. I don't think Kevin Feige would ever be coming out to say that. So I don't think his silence on the topic as to whether it's canon or not says that it's not canon.
Oh, agreed.
I very much think throughout this year we'll be playing the Is It Canon game.
Well, I don't want to play the Is It Canon game. It's all canon, is the point.
Yeah, so, but I think it's all canon, but they are going to cherry pick what parts of all is they think. So in that, say, I hate to say it, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is canon, but Mockingbird is not canon. Kingpin and other aspects could be canon, but maybe Karen Page is not canon. I'm not saying that Deborah Ann Woll is not canon or shouldn't be canon. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying they will cherry pick, I think, what works for future MCU aspects, and it will be then over the next 5 years we will then get a greater picture of what of those shows and those series are full canon and what are being kind of just let go. Because I don't think the only other aspect, the only way they could do it is to do what Star Wars did, which was everything became legends. All the books and the other things, the past became legends unless it was these films and or these TV shows or basically everything else. So the Thrawn stuff, originally the Thrawn stuff, the Shadow of the Empire, all that became legends or basically stories.
Yeah. You say that's the only way they could do it, but they could also do it the Marvel Comics way, which is every single comic that's ever been published by Marvel is canon. And
True.
They've changed stories to adjust people's backgrounds, and when people get reborn or come back from the dead, they do a new origin story. But every comic is basically canon. Nothing's been thrown out there. That's the Marvel way. So I'd suggest they're just going to ignore storylines where they don't want to drive people to go and find the Cloak and Dagger episodes, because they're not going to incorporate those stories anymore in future. But we've also created the multiverse this year, so they can simply say that took place in another pocket of the universe if they want to, and if they want to make any reference to it at all. But it sparked some interesting discussion this year, though.
Yeah, very much so. But we didn't just cover TV shows from a Marvel perspective, from an MCU perspective this year. We had 4 additional films as well. Which was fantastic. We had, and I'm going to go in my no personal order, Spider-Man No Way Home, Shang-Chi, Eternals, and Black Widow. Not saying that's my personal order, but that's probably my top 4.
It also has been sorted by the votes that we've received in from our wonderful fellow defenders and listeners. So that is the priority order as well.
It also goes by order too.
Yeah, Spider-Man No Way Home is the most recently released film, and we kind of said it, but it does feel, I can't remember whether we said it in our podcast about it, but it does feel like it's the level of Avengers, the excitement for it, and having so many major characters all appearing in one movie at the same time. So it's almost unfair to compare Spider-Man No Way Home against any of the MCU movies released this year. It's almost a different type of film than we saw this year. It's the first
film in a long time since the pandemic started to reach 1 billion in the box office.
Oh, yeah.
And that's like years. It's Sony's most popular and highest grossing film of all time. It is now, it's brought back that Avengers Endgame and Infinity War level of kind of box office discussions and wins, and the rest didn't. And now I'm even saying, like, Shang-Chi for me, and Spider-Man will always win, but if Shang-Chi was a close second in this one because of just how it came out of left field for me. I was not expecting the feels. I was not expecting the action. I was not expecting the level of detail, and just it blew me away on all accounts.
Yep.
And I that should, in a non-pandemic world, that could have easily been another $1 billion film. If it was as open and everything was as the world was as open as when Spider-Man was kind of released.
Yeah, we even said it ourselves. There's 25 MCU movies now, 27 MCU movies. And I think Shang-Chi was the 25th MCU movie, and we've seen every single one of them opening night in the theatre. Shang-Chi, unfortunately, we couldn't get to the theatre to see, and it wasn't available on the home box office, so it took us a few weeks to get out to see it, which is really unusual for us, and we podcast about it, so I'm sure there's a hell of a lot of Marvel fans that don't go out week one to go and watch these movies. So I would say Shang-Chi had one of the biggest potential box offices of the year that unfortunately the pandemic did hit, which is a shame, but the good thing is it was a fantastic movie that people are going to get to experience at home, and it is now available on Disney Plus for anybody to watch now. And it is a really exciting movie, really, really good. And I'm so excited to see where those characters go, in the future of the MCU, because, lots and lots of great, little indications of where they may go in the future as well. So that's going to be cool. We know Shang-Chi 2 is coming from the same director and writer. So that's already on the plan for a future movie, which is really cool. But yeah, I know the excitement for Spider-Man No Way Home kind of steamrollered overall, all the other movies from last year, didn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, if I just park Spider-Man No Way Home for a minute, then for me, Shang-Chi is my favorite Marvel movie. It felt real world building. It felt like a next step from what we've gotten in the first three phases and this move. I mean, read a few Shang-Chi comics, so the character wasn't totally unknown, but I loved this movie. It really was there for me. And I think a bit like with the TV shows, at the same time, I really enjoyed Eternals. It was a different way of them doing it. And I think, in the same way as when we got Ant-Man and it was going down that more comedic route, and we had Guardians of the Galaxy bringing in the space route. I think the Eternals was also actually really good. It was a different vibe, a different type of cinematic experience for Marvel, and for dues to them. Again, Black Widow, for me, I enjoyed that movie. It's given us a great character with Florence Pugh as Lena Belova, and the Black Widow's sister really, showing up in Hawkeye. So just really, really nice intertwining. Again, I thought it was great to get this backstory, even if it should have happened 5-6 years sooner. It was really good. It really connected in to me with Civil War and the Winter Soldier type movies that we got here, even though maybe the timeline was a little bit further along from that. But I loved it.
Do you guys think it's Black Widow is even better now after Hawkeye and seeing Yelena Belova in that show? What do you think?
I don't know whether it's changed. I don't think it's necessarily changed my view of the movie. I'm just really pleased that they've taken that awesome character from the movie and put it into the TV world.
It was nice to have it that close together as well, wasn't it? The appearances of both,
definitely.
Because I know that was my criticism. You said that as well. Like I loved Black Widow as a character. I love what they did in the story, but it's 7 years too late. It should have been done when the original negotiations were happening with Scarlett Johansson, and that's where I'll probably watch that movie. Is what I said at the time when it came out. Is when I'm rewatching, I'll kind of go, right, here's Civil War. Before we get into Infinity War, I'll slot in Black Widow there because it makes lots of sense. now at the end of the year, after seeing Hawkeye with Helena Belova in there, it's nice to kind of look back on Black Widow then and go, right, now we'll see a full movie featuring that character. So, so now I don't know exactly where I'm going to fit it in, whether it will be my rewatch of the series or whether it will be my rewatch of the movies.
Yeah. So, I mean, I really liked it. And then if I unpark Spider-Man No Way Home, then all I've got to say is just, it's Spider-Man No Way Home. I thought this was just phenomenally, like, it served fans, it gave story, it gave tears, it gave sentimentality, nostalgia, having the three Spider-Men on the screen. I thought they really, you know, with the Amazing Spider-Man, I have a real soft spot for those movies and for Andrew Garfield. And I just thought how he just shone in that movie. Was fantastic. It has obviously the Doctor, which I'm always going to be pleased to see, and as well all the old characters, Doc Ock, the Green Goblin, all of those, which was just, again, it just felt really, really good, and it gave a great trilogy for Spider-Man here, and for Tom Holland's portrayal of Spider-Man as well. And I, you know, fair dues to Tom Holland, because he's a big star. He's got this property of Spider-Man and he's done a phenomenal job with it. But also I loved how he interacted with Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire in this movie. It just felt so natural, and it gave vibes of Miles Morales' Spider-Man as well with this multiverse. I think they really gave this lovely energy to the movie. So, which I think is something that Sony seems to have pulled, out the bag here, recently with their portrayal of Spider-Man. Whether that's the influence of having Marvel, maybe, I don't know, but I don't think so. I think the team that they've collected around that they've made it epic, and yet he still feels like he defends Queens, you know? And that is the essence of that character.
Absolutely.
And it's great.
Absolutely. And I'm not going to give all the praise to Marvel either, but there was another Marvel movie released last year from Sony, which was the Venom sequel. It was okay. Probably about the same level as the first one.
That's true.
No, it is.
So I'd guess that's kind of Sony without Marvel.
I guess, yeah, you're probably right.
It's not terrible. Genuinely, I enjoyed the first Venom movie, but I kind of, the second one was fine and a little bit more of the same. So that's grand. Spider-Man No Way Home, really excited to watch that in the cinema as well. That was a great experience being able to be there when people were getting their first reactions to seeing what was up on screen. Shang-Chi, I loved it. I've watched it a couple of times now since we saw it for review, and it's just as good each time. Those characters are great and the actors in those roles are really, really good. Looking forward to Eternals. It comes out on Disney Plus, tomorrow as we record, the 12th of January. So, be able to watch that at home and see it again. I remember walking out of the theater at that one, or walking out of the cinema at that one going, it's okay. And then over the course of the weekend, and then when we recorded our podcast, liking it more and more the more I thought about it, which is something that's unusual for me for Marvel movies. I'm usually it clicks with me pretty quickly, as it's the MCU. I love it, but I kind of like that they've created something that took me a little time to think about and enjoy the nuance of. So yeah, I think that was a really good year for movies. I mentioned Black Widow already as well, but I think it was a really good year for Marvel movies, especially considering we had an entire year without them in 2020. So coming back with all four of those was pretty fun to go and watch, right?
Yeah, no, huge. For me, the only one I think, which is potentially, as a huge Neil Gaiman fan, the Eternals, I've looked back on it more, and it's not as high, so, which shocked me. The more I thought, looking back in 2021, I would have expected basically it to be my number 2. Just based on the property, the characters, my love of everything Eternals. So seeing this where it is and how everything else kind of wrapped out, I'm going to give it another watch tomorrow, and hopefully there's layers and details that I missed that will just improve my viewing each time going forward.
Yeah, or maybe, again, it's been a couple of months since you saw it, so maybe it's just dissipating from your mind.
Yes,
I know when you own the stuff at home or when it's available for streaming, you kind of throw it on more often than not. So you probably get to see it. If you get to see it when it comes out in Disney Plus, it might spark the memories that you had as well when we were talking about it. So I said at the time, and we all said this is that it's not a movie for everybody, and it's interesting that Marvel would make something like that it's not aimed at a mass audience. They pulled it out of multiple countries because some of those countries were asking to change elements about the film, and Marvel stuck to their guns and decided this is the film that they wanted to release to the world. So that told me this is something that they did want to present to the world as a movie, and they weren't looking for another billion-dollar blockbuster. They've had a bunch of those, and they are now willing to plow money back into their studio and tell stories that they want to tell. So I hope they stick with that as their future as a company, because we know not every single movie coming out of any movie studio, regardless, has ever done the same massive box office numbers every single time. So if they're going to be sustained as a storytelling studio, they need to have multiple types of storytelling. Some things for small audiences, some things for big audiences. So yeah. But they'll still be able to trade on the Marvel name for a very long time, I'm sure. I'm sure. Let's go into our final bracket of shows, guys. The other shows that we covered, things that don't fit into Marvel or into our animation. Covered 4 other shows in 2021. We started out the year, myself and John, getting our beaks wet on Marvel. Let's say, with the Marvel 616 documentary, a fun series of documentaries. Did some mini episodes talking about those documentaries, but understandably, it's a documentary show on Disney Plus, so we know a lot of people weren't watching it. But I think there was some fun things to talk about out there, weren't there?
Yeah, I've got a soft spot for the Marvel 616 series, in the sense that I don't think all of them kind of really grabbed me, but I would say there was good, decent 3 or 4 of them that did. And weirdly, the one that I was least expecting to sort of grab me, where they were taking Marvel into schools and for theatres. I thought it was just lovely. And in the end, that was just probably my best one from there. And then it was Japanese Spider-Man.
Fantastic.
And it was also looking at the role of women in developing characters for Marvel and bringing in new characters. So I really, really enjoyed that. So I have a real soft spot for the Marvel 616. And I think you can pick and mix on that. So definitely recommend people to check that out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely say go check out Marvel 616. They're half-hour documentaries, I think, for the most part, or 45 minutes. So definitely worth checking that out. We did cover 3 other drama shows throughout last year. 3 quite different shows. Pennyworth is a show from the creators of Gotham. Myself and John started out our podcasting career covering Gotham, and we've continued to follow along with the show and into Pennyworth in season 2. Another crazy show, because we did expect that though with the creators of Gotham. We expected it to go a bit crazier and crazier as the shows go on, and by the end of it we had a pretty super heroic character on board, freezing people and electrocuting people all around him as the season ended. Really interesting one for Pennyworth. It's also on some of the smallest channels in the world, so its audience is very small, as we know from our podcast. But it's moving to HBO Max this year, or it's being released on HBO Max this year. The first 2 seasons, I think, are available by the end of January. So it'll be really interesting to see the reaction is of people who haven't been able to watch this show, this interesting alternate universe of DC's UK.
I think we were the only podcast covering Pennyworth.
I think
actually.
We were.
If my memory serves me right. So, which is mad, but it really made for interesting engagement with members of the cast, and certainly, yes, mainly because it was on small stations. So really interesting. It's got a season 3 in the bag. So it's mad to think that Pennyworth got season 3 for me, yet Why the Last Man didn't get a season 2, for example. It's a real strange way how the TV or the decision-making gods just do things.
Absolutely.
But nonetheless, that is the case. And I mean, Y: The Last Man really, really enjoyed as well. I thought that just was like a fine wine getting finer and finer all the way through. I love that evolution of that show across all the episodes of the first series. And I really hope it gets picked up. And then Wheel of Time was just a lovely, epic smorgasbord of fantasy, loveliness, magic, dark lords, dark ones, in fact, dark spawn, dark friends, dark chocolate, you name it. It was evil on one side, heroic on the other, slightly dodged with the Aes Sedai, can you, can't you trust them? Like, money well spent from Amazon Prime and from the showrunner, but really, yeah, you galloped along with the heroes on the back of their horses for that one, and that I really loved. They nailed the feel and the excitement that fantasy should have. Like, it reminds you of the Lord of the Rings and the Fellowship, the way it was portrayed by Peter Jackson. It has just a lot. It has a lot to do as a series, introducing a world, but it was done really, really well. Yeah. And I must say that would be my top pick. And I cannot wait for season 2.
Excellent. What about you, Chris? I know Wheel of Time was your choice to add to the schedule for this year because you're a big fan of the books. This is one that you've been pushing us towards, but I know you're also a big fan of Y: The Last Man, the comic books as well. So that was one I think we all were agreed we were going to be covering for the year. What did you think of the adaptations of those two?
For me, Wheel of Time was the standout. It had way more potential pitfalls as an adaptation. Just in terms of the high fantasy elements and the a very wordy kind of narrative based. Let me describe this cloak in the color of white in extreme detail for at least a page. Rafe Judkins did an amazing job adapting that type of kind of novel. That being said, Y: The Last Man, what we got from that season and the ensemble, they moved it from a kind of 3-piece story where Yorick is the main character in the comic books. It is his story. It is his journey. They shifted the camera back and actually took into account a lot more of the wider cast in the comic book, and it made it 10 times better as an adaptation, and like intrigued me to the level of when we heard it wasn't getting a season 2. Now it's still there's still potential. Who knows? It may get picked up elsewhere. But because it has not been officially killed, I really hope it does, because I want to see where it goes. Whereas with, say, Mark Millar's Jupiter Ascending, a storyline I am in love with from a comic book perspective, because it is an epic 2-3 graphic novel if you really want to go into it. Now with a 4th. It is an amazing storyline. That shows adaptation. We
dodged a bullet on that one.
Yeah, we had it on our schedule. We did receive the episodes for review, and after watching 4 or 5 of them, just couldn't think of enough to talk about as a podcast about it, and it just. And
that's a choice we always make. Yeah, that's a choice we always make, in that we say there's so much negativity out there on the podcast and the internet and all that. We want to be the ones that dive in and talk the good about the show. And when we all kind of sat down after the first kind of 5-6 and went, can you? And I was like, I'm the fan. I could probably pull it. And you guys were like, no. And then I was like, well, that's not then what we do. That is not a choice we make. And like, any one of these, the Wheel of Time could have gone down that road.
Absolutely.
Many other shows could have gone down there. Like, like, oh my God, like there is always the chance an MCU show in the future will go down that road.
We've had 2 in the past that have gone down that road. So, it's no guarantee of quality. But yes, we would always look at something from the intention of the filmmakers. And I think for, when we watched Jupiter Ascending, we were trying to work out, was the intention just to get us to season 2, because it felt like they held most of the storyline until the last episode and then unloaded about half of it and kept it, hoping that expecting to get a season 2, and nobody's guaranteed a season 2 of any show unless you do a good job on the first one. So yeah, we didn't really want to watch a show that we had to complain about bits of every week.
No, so that's not fun for us or the audience. But what about you from these other shows, Derek? These final 4?
I absolutely loved covering Wheel of Time with you guys. It was really interesting being the person that knew pretty much nothing about the show going into it. I've read loads of fantasy novels before and have seen some terrible adaptations of fantasy before in shows, but Wheel of Time was just something that just I'd never crossed paths with. So it was really interesting having Chris, who's the book reader, who's read all 15 books, and John, who's read the first 2 and is on to the 3rd book now and really enjoying the storyline. It was great to have that. That was a new podcasting experience for me, because I generally would overall kind of lead the podcast and put our notes together and stuff like that. Whereas for Wheel of Time, very different for me to do that, because I was literally looking at it as a TV show and trying to work out what the TV show was trying to tell us was important about this universe. So I thought it was great fun to cover that, closing out the year with a big fantasy epic after doing so much other types of show during the year. I think it was great to do that. Yeah, really enjoyed Wheel of Time. Really excited to see what they come up with for the 2nd and 3rd season. And I think I will probably stay clear of the books for a while, because I'm kind of enjoying that position on the podcast.
Yeah, no, it's good.
But Y: The Last Man was one that I was looking forward to for such a long time. I reread the book series before it came out. I'd heard so much about the production over the years and was really excited and hanging my hat on this great show. And then it came out and the show was great. It was really good and got better, as John said, every single episode. And then to be told it hadn't been given a renewal from Hulu for all of those reasons, that Hulu won't renew shows. There's so many reasons. It's changed ownership. It moved to a different way of doing things. So there are loads of reasons why it didn't get renewed for a season 2 at Hulu. I'm really hoping that somebody would pick that up, and I'm hoping people don't stop talking about Y: The Last Man. It's a great show that shouldn't be lost to the winds of time. I'd love to see it come back in some form in the future. Or else we have our new answer for that question of which show should get more than 1 season. It's not just Firefly now. It's Firefly and Y: The Last Man, right?
Yeah. No.
Well, that's true. Yeah, exactly.
There you go. That's all the shows we covered throughout the course of 2021. We go through some of the results from our Facebook and Twitter polls on the shows that we covered. So on our animated shows, we mentioned Invincible, What If, and Bad Batch. This was a really hard-won battle over on Twitter, particularly. Marvel's What If came out first with 1 vote in the difference, and Invincible and Bad Batch got the same number of votes over on Twitter. So that was quite interesting. It's a very, very hard one battle. So over on Twitter, it's Marvel's What If. Over on Facebook, a different story. We have, with almost 48% of the vote, Invincible coming in as the winner of our best animated show of 2021.
Yeah,
very interesting.
Whoop,
yeah,
whoop.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
It's just fun to see the difference between the two channels as well. With our Marvel TV shows, interestingly, the main show that came out on both our Facebook group and on Twitter was WandaVision, getting about 40% of the vote over on Twitter and 35% of the vote over on Facebook. But on our Facebook group, Hawkeye and Loki were tied for position as best TV show with exactly 28% of the vote for each of them, which is quite interesting. Whereas over on Twitter, Loki was a more clear winner than Hawkeye. So interesting. I wonder if the hashtags had something to play in that over Twitter.
Maybe.
I was surprised by Falcon and the Winter Soldier being so low. I really was.
Yeah, I think as we mentioned, all of these shows are MCU shows overall, so it's quite difficult to parse them apart. And when you have to choose just one of those 4 shows, which was the choice that was available, unfortunately.
Well, that was it, wasn't it? That was the issue.
Yeah.
I had to really dig deep. As someone who normally picks 3 for my top 1, I was suddenly faced with an insurmountable problem.
Yep. Sorry, John. And sorry, everybody over the Facebook group and over on Twitter, but that's just how polls work. I was trying to find it. But yeah, I guess if you're looking at that order of priority, Falcon the Witch Soldier did come in as the lowest votes, for the shows. But, I think a lot of people enjoyed it anyway, as a show. For the movies, Spider-Man No Way Home, a clear winner on both Facebook and Twitter. And I think if I, compared every single show and movie that we did last year, I think it's the one that's got the highest number of votes. It's certainly got some of the highest listenership for an episode of the podcast that we've done for the last year as well, because I think everybody wanted to talk about it, and everybody who'd seen it, if all their mates hadn't seen it, they want to listen to a podcast that's talking about it, right? So, so they came and listened to ours, which was really nice. Thank you very much for that. On the other MCU movies, the non-Sony MCU, we'll say, how about that? Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, did come in as highest voted, from our listeners and fellow defenders. Eternals came in after that, and Black Widow came in quite low there, came in at the lowest point there. But I guess, you know, Black Widow, as we mentioned, is a story that we've known this character for such a long time. Eternals and Shang-Chi both have people that love them because they're brand new characters into the universe. So, I totally get that.
Yeah, no, and again, it's interesting for me as well how like-minded, hive-minded, I should say, the voting is in terms of even our own discussions internally, as hosts. It seems that kind of everyone's on a lot of the same track as us. Yeah. In terms of how everything kind of netted out from a year of content that is 2021.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the other shows that we covered, you know, we choose these because they are for different audiences. I wouldn't say there's a huge amount of crossover between the Wheel of Time watchers and the Pennyworth watchers, for example, or the Why the Last Man watchers. But quite interestingly, Wheel of Time, came out on top there of the other shows that we covered last year with Why the Last Man in second. I don't think that many people have seen Pennyworth, to be honest. So
I really don't think
a bit of a gap in our podcasting.
Or Marvel 616.
But I do hope that when Pennyworth comes out in HBO Max, that if you haven't had the chance to check it out, you get to watch it and catch up on the adventures of Alfred Pennyworth back in the swinging DC 60s.
But it's also, we have some very long-standing Gothamites, fellow Gothamites, as well, that have been with us there from the get-go, when we were covering Gotham.
Absolutely.
Moved with us with Defenders, picked that up, and, you know, lots and lots of listeners that still recall the Gotham days. Absolutely. Where it was Comic-Cons and meeting up at Comic-Cons and doing all that, which of course is just like also the other great thing about doing these shows, and linking in at the fan conventions.
And Gotham is still one of the best TV shows that DC have ever done.
Yep, and you've got Gotham Central and The Batman potentially coming both this year, potentially. Who knows where Gotham Central will end up landing, but
I think that was probably what we thought Gotham was going to be originally.
But we'll wait and see. Yeah, it's going to be, and you know, Renee Montoya will be back for that, so there's a one for you.
Absolutely. Renee Montoya, played by Victoria Cartagena, currently appearing on Batwoman, and has appeared on Gotham as well, played by the same actress, which is cool. I love that there's the connection there, even though Gotham is so superior to the CW shows, of course, as we often mentioned back at the time. That's it for everything that we've covered in 2021. I think it's time to take a trip to the pub and
the tavern. I think you will find, Derek.
Yes, that's true. Even I wrote that incorrectly. Yes, going off to the tavern to do our Wheel of Time pub quiz and choose the winner that we have for the Wheel of Time pub quiz. There may be some spoilers if you haven't watched Wheel of Time in the questions for these episodes, but since we're not doing a wrap up of Wheel of Time season 1, we thought it would be good to actually award the winner in this podcast, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, John, let's take us through the first two questions.
Yes, fellow wheelies, fellow quizzers, fellow Taverans. Here are the first two questions and answers from the Wheel of Time Tavern Quiz. Question 1 from episode 1. What does Rand give to Egwene that he has been carrying around with him all day? It was, of course, a strawberry.
That's right.
I do like the fact that Egwene said, has that been in your pocket all day? Not touching that. Hot and sweaty strawberries are not the thing to be eaten.
No.
And for question 2, in the story told by Moraine, how many days did the army of Manetheren hold out? It was 13 days.
Long time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Unlucky for some Manetheren, by the sounds of it, as their entire civilization was destroyed soon thereafter.
Yes. In episode 3, we had the question, how many coppers does Dana the servant girl charge Rand and Matt for their meal and their donation to the Gleeman? The answer was 3 coppers.
Mm-hmm.
There we are. And then in episode 4, what is the name of the dog that slept on Moraine's bed when she was at the White Tower? And of course, like all good dog names, it was Jenny, not Spot or Patch or Rover. It was Jenny.
Telling you about
Jenny the dog.
By the time we get to season 5, that'll be massively important. I'm sure of it. Our question on episode
Jenny
5.
wasn't a dog.
Yeah, Jenny can channel the one source.
Our question on episode 5 was, what dish does Perrin not want to eat anymore as he travels with the Tinkers? He doesn't want to eat turnip curry. Turnip curry.
I think I'd be right with you, Perrin, for sure on that one.
I feel like we've done a really nice turnip soup with curry powder in it.
Yes,
Which was
I think
lovely.
you could do it if you could blend it a bit more, kind of.
Yes, but this is where Derek is confusing turnips with parsnips.
Oh, that was right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was right. Thank you, John. Yes, I don't want turnip curry either. Our episode 6 question was, what is the name of the town where Leandrin keeps her secret relationship hidden? It was North Harbour.
Yes, what a dirty girl she's been.
On episode 7, how many soldiers do we see Rand's mother kill on the side of the Dragon Mount as she tries to give birth to her son? The answer was a pale 6, but she was giving birth, so we'll let her away with that as a Maiden of the Spear.
This was absolutely the best scene of the entire season. That
It
battle
It was
from
pretty
Rand's mother.
awesome.
Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing.
If you haven't had the chance, there is a quick behind the scenes on YouTube and X-Ray and on Amazon Prime Video that goes into the actual shows you how they filmed that scene with the and they actually brought in this particular piece of camera machinery on a dolly that filmed at such high speed that if the stunt actors were off, they would have been clocked so badly they would have got unconscious because it flipped so much.
Wow.
So if they had have missed a beat, they would have been made unconscious. Very interesting to see.
Yes,
Absolutely.
definitely.
Very, very cool.
And finally, our question 8. What words does Padden Fane use to access Faldara? It is the Kingfisher flashes above the pond. Yes, you dirty Kingfisher, you. Flashing above the pond is the words that Padden Fane uses to access Faldara.
Absolutely, absolutely. Those are the 8 questions and 8 answers from our Wheel of Time Tavern quiz for 2021. We may have made these questions a little too hard, guys.
Yes, we may have.
Slightly.
This is, we do have only 3 of our fellow wheelies who've gotten top marks for this tavern quiz.
Yes, who will be going into the draw for the goodies that we have, which include the companion book to The Wheel of Time. So you can learn all about your favorite characters.
Yep.
And we will be asking you, whoever you are that wins, we will be asking you your t-shirt size as well, as we will be getting official Wheel of Time t-shirt for you to put on and to maybe like a white cloak, for example, or one of the Azure of the Aes Sedai, different colours.
Okay, don't be promising t-shirts.
No,
that
I'm not
don't
promising
exist,
too much,
John.
but we have 3 fellow wheelies who got top marks. We have Dr. Bob Phillips, James Lawson, and Victor Von Doom.
Well done for getting all the answers right again. As I say, obviously quite difficult questions this time.
I have a feeling it may have been to do with the episode 7 question, with the number of soldiers that Rand's mother saw off while she was giving birth.
It might have
Could
been.
have
It might have been. But remember, if you do know the answers to all the questions, always send in an entry to us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com, and you could be in with a chance of getting some goodies about the show that that we're doing our pub quiz about. Let's go on and see who's won this.
Yes, so it is over to Chris, who will shout blindly at his wall so that the electronic voice that just permeates everything will be able to pick the winner.
Yes. Hey Google, randomly pick a number between 0 and 3.
Here's a random number, 2.
Excellent stuff. Yes, big congratulations to James Lawton, who has been picked out of the electronic tombola by Google's randomizer. Thank you so much for your answers to the questions, and congratulations on getting through to the tombola part. And commiserations to our fellow wheelies who weren't picked in this pub quiz. But thanks so much for entering, and to everyone that sent in their answers for the tavern quiz.
Excellent. Congratulations, James, for your win there. And we will have the results of our Hawkeye pub quiz on our Hawkeye wrap-up episode, which will be out after the Hawkeye Assembled episode, which is coming up on Disney Plus next Wednesday, the 19th of January. So that's when we'll be doing our Hawkeye pub quiz. But let's talk about some of the other shows we'll be covering in 2022. So let's talk about the shows we'll likely be covering from Marvel next year. I know Chris had in the doc, he'd entered a Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special, which we are unlikely to be covering in our coverage for next year. The shows we will be covering, because there's loads of shows coming out from Marvel next year, and loads of shows we do need to cover. We will be covering Moon Knight, Miss Marvel, She-Hulk, and Secret Invasion. Now, Secret Invasion is the one that, for as far as I'm aware, we don't know has it been confirmed for this year, but we know filming began on that last summer, with Nick Fury taking a lead role in his own TV show. Finally, I know as a Nick Fury fan that a Nick Fury TV show has been talked about since the early 90s. If anybody remembers David Hasselhoff as Nick Fury, that was the pilot for a Nick Fury TV show. So that's how long it's been talked about. But this time it's going to be Nick Fury in the lead of Secret Invasion. Kind of cool to have Samuel L. Jackson coming back.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. I think it will be because of the level of filming that has taken place, and some of the supposed, if any of the leaks are to be believed, the impact it will have on the wider slate of films and things like that.
Absolutely. Because I know a lot of people have already been talking about it, and we've been talking about it, that we believe there's already been an impact in the background on some characters acting slightly differently in some of the TV shows.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, I loved this comic event when it came out. Really, really enjoyed it. So I can't wait to see what they do. Simple as that.
What hero do you trust, and who's a Skrull in disguise?
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. Interesting one. The one that was announced to come out in 2021 was Miss Marvel, fully filmed, fully completed, due to be out in 2021, but was moved. Given the amount of content that Marvel released last year, that made lots of sense. But do you guys think that means we're going to see her as the first show coming up this year, since it was complete and was supposed to be out by the end of 2021?
No, there was some reshoots done, supposedly to bring it closer in line to some of the things that are happening in the Marvels, which is Captain Marvel 2, which has Monica Rambeau from WandaVision, Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan from this show, and Captain Marvel herself, Brie Larson. So that will have all of them in that film, which comes out next year. So apparently there was some reshoots. I think that is our Q2, our kind of April, May, June, because rumor has it, and again, rumors being rumors, Moon Knight is the show that opens 2022's MCU slate. I'd be interested to see both of these. Very, very interested to see where they go with Moon Knight. We know that some Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast.
Moon Knight, Chris.
The Moon Knight podcast. And I know he is all up for this, along with all the other Khonshu kind of fanatics that are there. So I'm interested to see both. I could easily see it's one or the other. One or the other is going to end up being the first film. First show.
Well, yes, there's only 3, Chris.
But there is one other Christmas special that you will not let us talk about.
No, we'll talk about it. It's one episode. It's not a TV
It
show
is.
though. So it's kind of like a TV movie on Disney Plus. As far as I know. So that's the other thing that will be happening, next year. But as we say, Moon Knight, Miss Marvel, She-Hulk, Secret Invasion are the likely shows that are going to be coming out from Marvel next year, during the course of 2022. Sorry. What do you think, John? What's coming up? What ones are you excited about?
Yeah, I've said Secret Invasion already. Miss Marvel, I'm really, really actually excited for this. I didn't think I was going to be, but in terms of learning more about the character, I can't wait to see this show. I'm just really looking forward to it. I'm really intrigued. Moon Knight, I'm stoked that's here. I just, with podcasting and having Ray involved with the Defenders for so long, and I know when Doctor Strange happened for me, like with Nick Fury with yourself, your grand Chris, Spider-Man's been around for ages,
Yes.
then absolutely stoked that happened. So I can only imagine the anticipation and excitement from Into the Night, the Moon Knight podcast, and of course the fellow loonies over for the anticipation for this. And I'm really excited to see what they do with this character, because in fairness, he has a lot of things going on that I really like with Khonshu and all of this. I guess almost given that we've just watched Dexter, his Dark Passenger, and there's also his DID as well. So there's a lot of stuff going on with this character of Mark Spector, of Moon Knight. And I'll be just really excited to see what they do with the character.
It's going to be really interesting because people that don't know the character will probably just think of him as a vigilante. So it'll be interesting to see how Marvel handle that in the universe and how they're going to cast Moon Knight as a character on TV. Because this year we've really dealt with a lot of major characters that everybody knew coming into all of the shows, everybody that's there. So these shows that coming up this year, Moon Knight, Miss Marvel and She-Hulk particularly, are all shows that feature characters that haven't appeared in the MCU before. So it'll be really interesting to see how they deal with all of them. She-Hulk is the one that's kind of, that I'm kind of pushing out of my mind a little bit for this year, because it's apparently the 9 episode, half-hour comedy show. And I just don't know what that looks like in Marvel yet. I have more of a sense of what Miss Marvel's going to look like, and more of a sense of what Moon Knight looks like. But She-Hulk's going to be quite different from what I understand from the descriptions of it. But until we start seeing trailers for them, I don't think I have a sense of that show. But everything they've done in the MCU has always made me interested to give it a shot anyway. So we'll see what's going to happen this year.
Yeah, She-Hulk for me is the Hawkeye. It's either it's going to end up being something that we absolutely love and just go, oh my god, how did we not guess this? And this is fantastic. Or it's just going to be something we really thoroughly enjoyed.
Yeah.
It's one or the, now again, could be that weird case, but I don't think so.
I kind of love the idea that that'll be the show where they'll introduce loads of characters crossing over because they're going in and out of a courtroom. I kind of like that idea where you could have loads of different people coming in and out of the show, and it could be completely different every week. That'd be cool.
And there is one other lawyer of well-known repute.
That is true.
Who potentially could come in. Who knows?
Absolutely. We could be seeing Matt Murdock back on our TV screens. That would be very cool. One other show that's on Disney, which we kind of mentioned earlier on, we mentioned the Bad Batch season 1 that we discussed that. Bad Batch season 2 is in production. No date confirmed, but possibility that could also be coming out in 2022 as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that moves us into some of our other main shows that come from Prime Video, which has been, in my opinion, kicking it out of the park. Mm-hmm. Not just even knocking it out of the park, kicking it out of the park this year. So in 2022, we have coming relatively soon, February, Picard season 2.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to see how they're going to bring this character back in for season 2. Season 1, we overall liked the season, the first season, and it was a very different type of story than we've seen with Picard in the past. And this season is going to be really interesting, film during COVID, but bringing back the Q character from Star Trek Next Generation. And
Awesome.
We all loved Q when we watched Next Generation and his appearances on the subsequent show. But it will be really interesting to see how they've produced the second season of the show, and confirmed for second and third season. The third season is currently in production at the moment. So I've said it before to the guys off air, but I much prefer a second and third season of a show. Second, third, fourth season. Give me as much as possible of a group of characters that are going on with adventures, because I think you can develop so much more when you get a group of characters going into a second and third season. And a lot of the stuff we covered in 2021 were first seasons of shows, which is always a bit more difficult to get into the groove of what the show's trying to do. So, so I'm really
and
excited
only
to see
seasons of shows for some of them,
and only seasons of show for 2021.
One-offs.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what we have for Star Trek Picard at the end of February, I think, but no date just yet.
No, and it's a weird one because it does have time travel, according to the trailer.
Yeah.
And that's a very interesting. The trailer didn't grab me.
Really?
No, the trailer didn't grab me. Q grabs me.
Yeah, I love
the trailer didn't.
Yeah.
But Q, wasn't he in the trailer?
He is.
So part of the trailer.
Part of the trailer, then. Let's say that the time travel aspect we have been done in Star Trek The Motion Picture.
And Discovery as well.
True.
You're not a Star Trek show if you don't do time travel, Chris. It's been every single
fair.
Star Trek TV show and movie. I think. Not every movie.
Okay,
Most
let's say the travel to the current past, which is the current day when the film comes out. That's the interesting part. But I am very much here for it. Let's wait and see how it goes.
It might be the first Star Trek show to reference the pandemic, which would be quite interesting.
Oh my God.
Always difficult when you film a show set in the future and miss out something like 2.5 years of pandemic that people have been going through. So they may want to decide to reference that in Star Trek. That'll be really interesting. The boys are having a big year on Prime Video as well, aren't they?
Oh boy. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
Oh boys.
You could say the
Chris.
boys.
Yeah.
Yes, the boys season 3 hits our faces with a big giant thing that slithers in through a door, as we saw in season 2. June 3rd with 3 episodes.
Yep.
Continuing until then July 8th with the final episode.
Yeah.
And that's just the boys. And we saw not a cliffhanger, but we did see poor old wee Huey go off to potentially work with a supervillain.
Yes.
Yes.
So who knows?
Yeah. The boys had split apart at the end of the end of season 2, believing the mission was accomplished effectively. So
we saw a defenestrated villain, sort of also on a cliff edge, across Manhattan.
Yeah.
Telling everyone in the city below exactly what he thought of them.
Yeah.
Very true. But we get 2 other boys shows this year, supposedly. We get the new college show, which is similar to Teenage Kicks, apparently referencing the name Teenage Kicks, but we're not quite sure, which is the Xavier Academy, X-Men Academy type one, where it's going to be they are the superheroes in training in college, coming up in the world. Going to be interesting. I don't know where this will be.
I don't know where it's going to go, to be honest, but I'm kind of intrigued if they take the concept of the roughest secondary school possible, and put them into that college.
Yeah, it could be.
I think that'd be really funny. I think it would really feel like The Boys for sure.
So it's essentially Grange Hill.
No, rougher than Grange Hill.
Sorry, that was a reference to any of our UK listeners. There you go. That's going to be an interesting one.
I'm intrigued by this. It's again, from showrunner Eric Kripke, he's done such a good job moving over from Supernatural to, which was his biggest show beforehand, moving over to The Boys and creating a show that isn't just exploding heads in your face every week, which sometimes the comic could feel like the Boys
Yes.
comic, and which can sometimes be just about how we can shock you this week with the storyline
Yeah.
or with the artwork or something like that. But we've been saying for each of the series that we cover in the Boys, we've been kind of surprised about how much heart he's been able to get from the characters. Sometimes the characters were quite illy defined in the comic books, and he's created really good characters around them for the TV show. But really interested to see what he does with season 3, and interesting if he's able to carry that on with brand new characters into a separate spin-off, or some existing characters from the Boys and pulling them into this college spin-off. I don't know how it's going to work, but we'll certainly be checking it out and seeing what comes from it. Another spin-off, as we mentioned, as Chris mentioned, there's a third spin-off, which is the Diabolical animated show, coming from the Boys as well. So this is a bunch of interesting creators who've been given the task to write episodes based in the universe of the Boys, and apparently just been told to tell whatever story they want to, no reins on them at all. So there could be some very interesting stuff coming out of that show.
Yeah, it's like Star Wars Visions, but in the Boys. It's gonna be. We've got Seth Rogen doing takes. Apparently, like there's some other well-known stand-up comedians. John Mulaney, I think, is referenced. It's either gonna be amazing or it's gonna be hit or miss each and every week. So I'm interested to see. I trust they've earned my trust in the first 2 seasons now, so I'm interested to see where it goes.
Absolutely. The Boys expanded universe.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And definitely hope they pull it off, to be honest. We also have just to on Prime Video, and just to keep the fantasy side going, there is of course the Wheel of Time season 2 following on from this first season that we've just covered, possibly in November 2022, where we will find or journey with Rand, see where he gets to, what happens at Faldara in the aftermath of the big battle. And of course, Prime Video really going fantasy on us, because there is, in September 2022, there is the Middle Earth TV show as well. Looking at the world of J.R.R. Tolkien, and back in the early days, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been seeing lots of artwork coming out this week calling it the Lord of the Rings TV show. And it's not a remake of the 3 Lord of the Rings movies.
No.
This is set in a different time on Middle Earth, but I know they have to make a connection between the two, because some people may not make the connection, I suppose. So, we don't have a name for the show as of yet. I think it is just Middle Earth. And season 1 due to start from Friday, the 2nd of September, 2022. So it's very likely we'll be going straight from Middle Earth TV show directly into the Wheel of Time. So we are going to be fantasying it right up towards the end of
We won't know where one starts and the other ends, to be honest. It'll be very interesting. There's so much that these two sort of massive properties have in common to some extent, but have have it in different ways and with different evolutions. Certainly with Wheel of Time being later, shall we say.
Yeah, and if you thought we were messing up the names on season 1 of Wheel of Time, wait till we get Middle Earth going on, and then leading into Wheel of Time. It's gonna be fun.
Well, absolutely. Yes. I mean, the interesting thing as well, we were talking about the adaptation on Wheel of Time, but for me, Peter Jackson's adaptation of the Lord of the Rings books was so good. And we were talking recently, myself and Derek, just how the character of, say, Tom Bombadil in the Lord of the Rings trilogy takes up so much of the books. There's large amounts on him in the books, but isn't in the movies. So I think it'll be interesting to see the adaptation of Lord of the Rings for sure, because I really enjoy fantasy. I found Lord of the Rings as books really a struggle for me. Right. Even though in the end I loved them, but I remember even just I was damaged as a child, dare I say it, and because I went from The Hobbit, which I loved, straight into the Fellowship of the Ring, and I was just like, okay, this isn't like The Hobbit.
Yeah.
And I was quite young. And it just made me put them away for such a long time, to be honest.
Right now is the one I'm most unsure about how much I'm going to enjoy. I enjoyed The Lord of the Rings. It would not be one of my top series or kind of franchises because it is so epic. And I'm very similar to Mr. Harrison. I read it as a child, and I read The Hobbit as a child, and every now and again I was just like, oh, I forgot who this person is. And let me go check this Ream index. Now, saying this as someone who's read all 15 books of the Wheel of Time, like, I know it's probably to do with timing and age and things like that. Yeah. Just never, it did not grab me as much as, say, The Wheel of Time grabbed me. And again, that could be the old emo kid in me. I'm not going to read the same thing everyone else reads. I'm going to read my own version. Which is The Wheel of Time. Yeah.
Which has now become that.
Exactly.
The wheel weaves as the wheel wills.
Absolutely. But I'm a huge fan of Lord of the Rings. I'm really excited to see what they do in the TV show. I know there's going to be lots of comparisons with Peter Jackson's movies. Yeah. I know they filmed the first season over in New Zealand. They tried to use a lot of similar things to evoke what Peter Jackson was doing, but it's not Peter Jackson, and it is a TV show. So things like excluding Tom Bombadil, a major character within The Lord of the Rings, for time, which is what Peter Jackson had to do, it means they may not have to do that. The Lord of the Rings is a winding epic story, but it is not about battles. It's not about getting to the battle, which is what the movies were about. It was for a movie audience. So it will be quite different. It'll be interesting to see how much of the style of Tolkien's writing they'll be taking as opposed to the style of doing a fantasy epic TV show. Yeah. So that's one of the things I'm most interested about. And that's the only thing that would concern me about it, because it is going to be different than The Wheel of Time. It will look different, but after seeing The Wheel of Time, I know that Prime Video can do epic fantasy as well. So right now I'm really up on this. I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes from the Middle-earth TV show. Speaking of things I'm looking forward to, and speaking of things that are coming up that are really exciting, the second season of Good Omens from Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett is coming this year.
Whoop, whoop.
I cannot wait. So excited for this. Loved season 1.
Absolutely.
Based on the book. This is not in that sense.
Yeah, it's not based on a book, but based on a treatment that Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman put together back when they were doing Good Omens, about what could happen with the characters of Aziraphale and Crowley if they continued on together after that story ended. So that's quite interesting. I love when Neil Gaiman was getting criticism for it not being based on a book, and he was going, well, the original book wasn't based on a book either. So I thought that was good. The book didn't exist before I wrote it. So that makes loads of sense. So I'm really intrigued. Great to see that cast back together again. I think Michael Sheen and David Tennant are so good on screen in pretty much everything they've done. But I do think Good Omens is probably the epitome of what the two of them have done together for me. I think it has worked so well. And you see them on everything, on panel shows. You've seen them on doing their own TV show, stage comedy show. They've appeared together so many times over the years now, but Good Omens was such a great first experience of the two of them together, and I'm really glad that they're coming back for season 2.
Yeah, I'm so excited for Good Omens season 2, which is filming now, but it's probably more than likely going to be in 2023, but you never know how it goes. So Michael Sheen and David Tennant are just sublime together in the first season. Yeah. It's funny, it's witty, so I really can't wait for it. You know, the Singing Nuns or the Chattering Order of St. Beryl were just so good as they sort of nursed the devil born into the world in the first season of Good Omens. So I really hope that flavour is taken through. To be honest,
poor little baby Antichrist with his lovely toesy woesies.
Yes, exactly.
But speaking of Neil Gaiman, this year more than likely we are also getting over on Netflix the epic. Speaking of epics, Sandman.
Yeah, this is something that I never thought was going to be filmable.
No.
Probably one of the most talked about comic book series of all time. Sandman is one that lots of comic fans give to other people if they think they don't like superhero comics, check out Sandman. It's something to read. It's something to share with other people. I'm shocked it's coming after listening to the first 2 acts of the audio plays. I can envision it in my head how it can be adapted. So I'm really hopeful for this. Neil Gaiman's heavily involved, saying all the right things about the people involved at Netflix and what they're doing with the treatment of Sandman. This is confirmed for 2022 right now. It's being called the year of Sandman by all the fans, and Neil Gaiman's retweeting that constantly. So it has been confirmed for 2022. That we've seen a little bit of footage of it as well from an early trailer back in October of last year, but it's going to be really interesting. Unfortunately, my pet peeve, it's on Netflix, so it's all dropping in a day. For such a big, epic show, I wanted to have that thing that we have where you can pour over it every week like we have with Wheel of Time. But we won't be able to do that with Sandman. We will, of course, discuss it on the podcast and pick it apart, of course, as we always do. But, it's a bit of a shame that it's all coming out in one day over there.
But we will still be covering it weekly.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
yeah.
But speaking of another show, again, we're talking about shows coming into and finding their feet in their second and third seasons. This year as well, we see the return to the the Sparrow Academy.
Yes.
Yes, season 3 of Umbrella Academy is confirmed for this year, for 2022. Filming has finished. It's in post-production. They are now teasing the main accounts are teasing the Sparrow Academy and the characters we will meet.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's due. We don't know when it's due, but it is due.
Yeah. This is likely to come in first half of the year. I think the teasing has just started at the start of January. I think it's likely to come in the first half of the year, but it's been a really weird year for TV. I think when we've done this wrap up and look forward on TV in the past, we've had a lot more dates at the start of the year for shows.
Yes.
Shows coming up, but it seems like nobody wants to release their schedule for the year just in case anything happens with their post-production or with the final filming that they've got going on. So it will be interesting. But yes, Umbrella Academy season 2 particularly was a big surprise for us. A really, really good second season of that show. After the first season had some really good characters in it, second season was a really good show overall. So I'm excited for season 3.
Oh, me too, definitely. I can't wait for this. Dare I say it, slightly more up for this than The Boys season 3. I loved season 2. I love season 1 as well. There's characters in here that I simply adore, and I think have been done so much better than the comics. So don't shoot me, but I just love, I love these characters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No. Completely agree. I really can't wait for this. I think it's going to be, if rumors are to be believed and the story they are adapting, then it is going to be a very, very good show.
Excellent. And I know we mentioned on the podcast that Umbrella Academy did get through all of the comic books, and I'd agree with John that the show does such a better job with those characters overall. So I can't even remember, is there a great storyline they haven't touched on the show so far? Because I don't think it got to a great storyline. But I'm really excited to see whether they'll
burn.
one up it again on season 3 of Umbrella Academy. Excellent stuff. We mentioned already the only other show that we have that we're covering next year. We haven't mentioned so far Pennyworth season 3 coming out on HBO later this year after the first 2 seasons are made available. We'll be going back for that. Sure, why not? It's always fun to talk about Alfred Pennyworth in the DC universe. Speaking of the DC universe, we will also be covering some movies next year. One massive one that's coming out, The Batman, coming on March 4th. Really, really interested to see what Matt Reeves is going to be bringing to this universe of The Batman.
Yeah, I'm interested to see. We talked about not a lot of dates so far on the TV shows. Mm-hmm. The film schedule is the one I'm very interested to see how that, saying now the dates that we have versus how that actually fleshes out towards the end of the year. But obviously, the world being the world we currently live in, we have already seen Morbius slip its scheduled date into later in the year. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be interesting to see the Batman, which one is I'm very interested to see, will that actually land in March?
Yeah.
It's going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, I hope so. And I think you mentioned it as well earlier on, Chris, but I was going to just save it for this little bit of discussion. Interestingly, this is the first movie in the DC universe that is getting a tie-in TV show off the back of it as well. The Gotham Central coming on the back of it, with most of the major cast from the Batman going to make appearances in that show, which will be very interesting to see. So it's the first time that DC have really done this, tying in a TV show to their movies, kind of following the Marvel model, right? So it'll be interesting to see.
Technically, we have Peacemaker coming out on January 17th.
Very true. Thanks,
which
Chris.
is a tie-in to the Suicide Squad.
That's correct. Sorry, I'm completely incorrect. Chris is totally right. Peacemaker is the first show that ties in, but the Batman being notable for the fact that that it has got that connection to Gotham Central as well.
And I guess we'll be covering Gotham Central.
Absolutely. We're going back to Gotham. Anytime you want to bring us back to Gotham, we'll be there. Excellent. Next big MCU movie coming for the year. Been moved once already. Hopefully it'll stay where it is. But, John, finally everything leads to Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
Yes, Mom, in other words. Yes, it Mother has landed. Look, I've said it a million times, in multiple, multiverses, which is quite a lot, actually. Multiple multiverses. Then, can't wait for this. The one thing I have, theory I've learnt very recently is that on the current teaser, there is a Doctor Strange with a ponytail. And of course, because it's been delayed and the action figures haven't been delayed, there's a third Doctor Strange from the teaser trailer with his ponytail, which certainly will be great for the Defenders podcast, for sure.
Yes, it will.
Yes, it will.
If rumors are to be believed.
If rumors are to be believed.
It was interesting when John pointed this out the other day that this is the room that's going round. I thought it was interesting that the poster that Marvel have literally just released for the Multiverse of Madness has 3 Doctor Strange on the poster with 2 Scarlet Witches. So I thought that was quite interesting. Whether they're just playing into that in a little sly way as well was quite fun. But really excited to see Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness kicking off directly after the events of Spider-Man No Way Home as well. Like, it ties directly into that, which is quite interesting to have that story continued in there. Two other movies coming out this year in the MCU that I actually forgot were coming out this year. For some reason, I thought Black Panther 2 Wakanda Forever was in production, but it was in production for a much later date, sometime in 2023. But that's aiming to come out on November 11th, 2022. Now, production did stop recently with Letitia Wright having an injury, reportedly. So we don't know whether the production has resumed. As such, they were filming around her and filming scenes that didn't contain her for a while, but that seems to have been going on for a bit longer than they expected. So I hope they can make that date this year, because I am excited to see that universe of Wakanda continuing.
Definitely.
Yes.
And there's so much dependent on that, because we will have a show based on the Dora Milaje coming to Disney Plus in the future as well. That's already been announced. So a lot of dependency on having that universe coming back into the world of the MCU prior to that show starting on Disney Plus as well. So one of those wonderful MCU things of having to get so many ducks in a row. So much production going on.
Definitely. I'm really looking forward to seeing Black Panther 2 for sure. And also then there is the movie that you cannot wait for, Derek, which is Thor: Love and Thunder.
I skipped twice and forgot to put it on the document when I was putting together the list of all the things we're covering, and then realized that's also it this year. Yeah, July 8th, 2022.
Yeah. I think this has potential of being one of a really good one.
Yeah.
It has Valkyrie, it has Jane Foster is returning.
Yeah.
Natalie Portman as Jane Foster is returning. You have the Guardians of the Galaxies.
Exactly.
Are going to be in this, probably at least at the beginning. You have Christian Bale as potentially the God Killer. It's the main villain.
Yeah.
Which Christian Bale as a villain always going to be a good. It has huge potential. It's to be questioned about what level of comedy they go for in this, where the mighty Thor, which was Jane Foster's character, there is going to be a question of, so she became Thor in the comic books because she had cancer. So I am wondering if they're going to continue that storyline, because that is it's a very dark storyline. parts of it.
Absolutely. It'd be very interesting if Taika Waititi puts any kind of storyline to it at all.
Oh, it's already, gosh.
It's already started, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, Derek is on fire with his burns today.
You know, it's fascinating. I do love Taika Waititi and a lot of the movies that he's done. I just know that this one will have more influence from him than the last movie did, and I'm just not that massively excited for Thor: Love and Thunder. Of course, we're going to watch it, and we'll talk about it when we get to podcast about it. But one that I know we're all excited about, and I'm definitely looking forward to this one. Another Spider-Man movie's coming out next year. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1 has been announced for October 7th, 2022.
Yes.
We all loved Into the Spider-Verse. I know we still probably put it up there as one of the best Spider-Man movies.
One of the best comic book movies of all time.
Yeah, maybe one of the best comic book movies as well. And I know you guys were still kind of battling about whether that's No Way Home now and Into the Spider-Verse. Recency bias and how great No Way Home is, of course. Kind of edging it up there as well, but Into the Spider-Verse was a fantastic version of the Spider-Man.
Still my favorite
story.
Yeah, it's going to be huge. And Oscar Isaac, who had a cameo at the end of the Into the Spider-Verse, now here, basically full on in this show
as Spider-Man 2099. Yeah.
Yes, Miguel O'Hara.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be interesting to see where this goes, and it's part 1 of 2.
Yeah.
So it's going to be an epic of a film.
Yeah.
So I can't wait to see.
Absolutely. So many epics that we'll be covering next year. How are we
really
going to have
is.
the time, guys? That's the big question.
Yeah, just not on Epics.
No.
Anyway, it will still be on Epics next year, John. I promise.
will?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I will say is one honourable mention that I just want to say for our fellow industrialists to have a check for is on Prime Video, starting at the end of, I think it's the 28th of January, is The Legend of Vox Machina, which is an animated version of Critical Role's D&D show. It is going to be good. It is just, through all those things that we said we're covering, this is one that just we couldn't make happen in terms of the covering for this year. So strongly recommend everyone check it out as an honourable mention. Yes, The Legend of Vox Machina. In the end of January.
Interesting. I'll have to have a look at that. I don't know much about Critical Role or their D&D show, so I'll be interested to see what comes out of that.
Yes,
I know we've talked about it before. One of the shows that's outstanding that we haven't talked about at all is The Witcher, because unfortunately, due to our recent extended stay in the UK, we've missed our opportunity to fit The Witcher into our podcast coverage. The way we normally would, which is we recorded in between Christmas and New Year's and released it at the start of the year. So we're just trying to find time and see if how we're going to be able to cover The Witcher before we start our next schedule of shows. We're hoping that we're going to be able to get back to cover The Witcher, hopefully before the end of this month, guys.
Yeah,
that is the hope.
Yeah,
it is just, it's like a moving dartboard trying to find time and space to both watch and then cover.
Exactly. One of those shows we were all hoping to binge during that period between Christmas and New Year's, and then we lost it and didn't have any internet to binge on Netflix, unfortunately. But hopefully we'll be able to cover it. Hopefully you've been enjoying The Witcher. If you have, you can send in feedback to us at feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com with any thoughts you have on The Witcher or any of the upcoming shows that we're going to be covering over the year. Hopefully you're going to stay with us for all the shows that we're covering throughout the year. Please make sure you join us over in our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries, where we will hopefully give you some advance notice of the shows coming up and what their release dates are as we get them in, so you'll know what we're covering on TV Podcast Industries. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can, of course, share the podcast on your socials. Make sure everybody's listening to us with all the covers that we're going to be doing over the course of 2022. You can also provide support by buying us a coffee on buymeacoffee.com/TVPI. If you'd like to support us for a monthly amount, you can go over to Patreon to patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries. You can support us for any amount monthly over there as well.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for everyone who does support us right now. But if you want to support us in the future, it really does mean a lot, because we do this in our spare times for the love and the thrill of it. But there is still bills to pay, server costs to do, websites, etc. But we do really appreciate any and all support you can give. But we do want to give a quick shout out to our current Patreons, because you guys are helping us along. So, starting at the top, Andrew Davis, Roberta R., Todd Myers, Matthew Murdoch, Jeff McMurray, Jean, Lawrence Couser, Anthony Ulster, Alex, Baelish Victor Von Doom, the one and only Lord of Latvia, Siren School, Mike Scannell, Kevin Smith, not that Kevin Smith, Off-White Saviour, Heather Wallace, P. Locklear, Skyrocker,
William Boggs, Marianne Morris, James Urin, Angie Urhouse, Lisa Sweat, Franca Montevego, Cassandra McIntosh, Jenny V, Alice Bola, Rich,
Jessica Batras, Robert, Steve Brown, Amy Fitzgerald, Into the Night, The Moon Knight Podcast, Oren Dix, Stuart Campbell, and Claire Payne. And of course, over on Buy Me a Coffee, we want to give a quick shout out to our most recent hot brews, which were provided very kindly by Andrew, Sandy, and Jarvis.
Absolutely.
All the support from our fellow Buy Me a Coffeeers, as well as our fellow patrons, of course, is really, really appreciated throughout 2021 and moving forward, as well as everyone who subscribes, reviews us, rates us, sends in their feedback, and supports us in any which way you can. Because, of course, sharing the podcast is sharing the love. And so thank you so much for all that support.
Yes, and I've got a quick ask for everyone out there. If you are listening to us on Spotify or you have Spotify, they have recently introduced the Spotify podcast review system for podcasts and episodes. So if you like us on Spotify, please run over there and give us a quick review. 5 stars, you know, that's the way to go. Because as John says, sharing the podcast is sharing the love, but also sharing the love is by tapping 5 stars and saying how great we are.
Absolutely. Thanks so much to all of our wonderful listeners, everybody that's joined us throughout 2021. We hope you'll stay with us through 2022 for what you can probably tell is a massive schedule for the year and lots of stuff we're looking forward to. And we'll be back next week with our wrap-up of Hawkeye Season 1 and our discussion about the Hawkeye Assembled documentary over on Disney+.
Excellent stuff.
Yes, I'm going to go get sleep now because I'm not going to get much going through the rest of the year.
Well, absolutely. Yes, thank you so much, fellow industrialists, for joining us. Remember, keep watching and keep listening. Bye.